Hello and welcome to the third episode of ACM's Vault of Cult, the movie podcast that takes a film from the 80s or 90s that flopped or got critically panned, but is loved by many still to this day. The first two episodes we discussed Teen Wolf and Masters of the Universe. Thanks to everybody who listened to those. The episodes will still be up if you missed them. Any feedback, perfectly welcome. This week I chat about the Super Mario Brothers movie, which came out in 1993 to a very, very bad reception critically, and it made less than half its budget back at the box office. A film I did see at the cinema. I'd have been about 11 or 12 years old. I remember enjoying it. I liked the fact Bob Hoskins was in it. It was a few years after both Hook and Who Framed Roger Rabbit, two films that I very much enjoyed as a child. And I loved the video games, the Super Mario Brothers Nintendo franchise. I had a Nintendo from a very young age. I remember playing the first three games over and over again. I very much looked forward to this film coming out, and I did enjoy it. Aided by a great cast, soundtrack and score, lots of humour. It was fairly dark, which is one of the many things it was criticised for. But I rewatched it last night for the first time in quite a while. Still enjoyed it. Maybe not as much as I did when I was a kid, and I could see that it was very flawed. I'll be chatting about it in a second with Andrew, who you may remember from the first two episodes joined us with Owen to discuss those other two films. He watched it for the first time last night, and we're going to compare thoughts on it now and talk about some of the stories behind the films that we've heard as well. And so, this is the conversation I had with Andrew. Thanks again for joining me.
Always a pleasure. I've killed and eaten Owen Reese this week.
Yeah, well, he's at work, isn't he? So that's the real reason.
Allegedly.
Yeah, I don't know if he's even seen the movie. But Super Mario Brothers, up until last night, you hadn't seen it.
Very true.
What were your thoughts on the film before you went in? Had you heard much about it? And is there a reason you haven't watched it until now?
It's one that's quite hard to get hold of. I've never really seen it. I've never seen it on telly or anything like that, and it's never one that seems to get much of a trumped up big release particularly, so I'd not really seen it before. You hear the horror stories about it, that everyone hates it and everyone's sort of publicly disowned it, and so it's never really been massively on my radar beyond just the negativity, so it was interesting to delve into it a bit further. Yeah,
so I could say that unless I sort of asked you to watch it, you probably wouldn't have done unless maybe it popped up on TV and you were free, sort of thing.
Probably, yeah. It's not one I'd have sought out, I suspect.
Yeah. And obviously you'd heard negative things about it. That's mainly what it's remembered for, the bad reviews, and Bob Hoskins himself said it was the worst thing he thought he ever done. Which should we start on the performances actually?
Yeah.
Because Bob Hoskins in the lead as Mario. The role was initially offered to Cheech Marin from Cheech and Chong.
Did they ask both Cheech and Chong? Mario and Luigi?
That would have been
amazing.
That would have been, I imagine age-wise that wouldn't have worked.
No, perhaps not.
But that would have been a totally different and probably more adult film.
Yeah.
But in the 90s, Cheech Marin was doing sort of kiddie-friendly stuff, and he was in the Golden Girls spin-off around that time, which was more in the Golden Palace. That was more family-friendly. And then Danny DeVito was going to play the role, which I could see working.
He was to direct as well, wasn't he?
At one point, a lot of people were meant to direct this. And that fell through. I'm guessing it's around the same time as Matilda, so maybe that was the reason. I'm not 100% on that. And
so Offer about the same time as well, wasn't he?
Yeah, so busy man. That's probably why. And kind of with films like this, they have to get them out as soon as possible because the fan base is there and. Yeah. They might move on. And interestingly, it was 93. Mario has been quite big since, was it, mid-80s to games?
Yeah, the first one was 83?
83, 84, and he was in Donkey Kong before the character.
Yeah.
So, being a character that we don't know much of apart from the cartoons, I think Bob Hoskins, personally, was perfect for the role.
Yeah.
He's likeable, does the accent well.
And it's like a real person.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, what did you think of his performance? Have you seen him much else as well?
Yeah, so Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and then he shows up in lots of things. I think well so.
I mentioned in the intro around the same time he was in Hook, just before.
Oh, of course he was in Hook, wasn't he?
Yeah, and but obviously he's been in the sort of British gangster films, which was how he made his name, and then went to Hollywood. And he was quoted in saying that he didn't want to do this initially because he didn't want to become sort of a Dick Van Dyke actor who's.
I suppose after 2 or 3 films just before that, very much in that similar sort of vein. I suppose he wouldn't necessarily want to. Kind of typecast, I suppose.
No, he was really anti it when he first read the script. I think they kept sending him different versions of the script, and eventually he caved and done it. I know his son, he had a young son at the time, was a big fan of the Mario franchise, so possibly that might be why he done it, in the same reason that the chap who played Skeletor in our first episode we mentioned. But I think he's perfect for the role, and with all the criticisms, no one really criticised Bob Hoskins and his performance.
I'd like to have seen DeVito's take on it. It probably would have been quite similar, but maybe funnier. Yeah,
it might have been, but I don't think I don't think he's quite got the look as well as Bob Hoskins, because Bob Hoskins got kind of that sort of, he wasn't fat but kind of roundish, and you don't. It's not too unreal to see him run the boat. Yeah. Whereas Bob Hoskins, Danny DeVito would have looked a bit out of breath.
Hilarious.
Yeah.
Which would have been great, but maybe not appropriate for the film, perhaps.
Yeah. They could have got Arnie to play his brother.
That would have, been the.
Yeah, but interestingly, Arnie was offered the role of Cooper, one of the actors. I'll talk about that when we.
That would have been interesting.
Weird. Yeah.
I think that could have worked quite well.
Yeah. And it's a big name as well.
Yeah.
But it could have gone either way. It could have been a big hit, or it could have been his earlier Batman and Robin.
Yeah.
And it was released the same year when his first major big budget flop happened, The Last Action Hero, which I think is quite an enjoyable film, but not one I'd go back to a lot. So have you seen that?
I haven't seen that, no.
It's definitely worth a watch. If you're a fan of action movies and comedy, it's well worth it. But yeah, I think Bob Hoskins was perfectly suited for the role, and definitely one of the best things about the film.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Yeah. And he brought a lot of. He can act, and he brought a lot of comedy to it as well.
Yeah.
And considering that apparently he wasn't happy on set, arguing with the directors,
heavy drinking.
Yeah, that's him and the chap who talked about him.
John Leguizamo.
Yeah, he played Luigi. There's big age difference between them two as well.
It's an interesting take for that, because. It's not something I'm aware of in the games, there being a big age gap like that.
No, there's obviously he's the younger one. That's been, but they sort of it's almost like a father-son role. And they mention that in one of the lines that Mario's brought him up.
Yeah,
and
didn't you call him his mother or something?
Yeah, yeah. And that's like I tell you, it's that humour carries the film. I think and it's very kid-friendly yet dark.
Yeah.
But the performance is Luigi. I think I'm a bigger fan of this than you are from what we briefly. Were you not too keen?
I like John Leguizamo. He's good in a lot of things. He's often in films I don't really like, but he elevates them. Sort of his presence in Baz Luhrmann films is normally something that elevates them beyond just being irritating. But he doesn't quite work for me in this one. I don't know if he's really given enough to do. He's sort of the wide-eyed innocent type a little bit.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure that's something suited to him. Maybe if he'd been a bit more of the sort of bad boy type that he's quite good at being, it might have worked better. I did hear that they wanted Tom Hanks at one stage.
That's it, yeah.
And I think that might have been a better fit.
Yeah, I mean, strangely they wanted him. Well, not strangely they wanted him. Strangely they didn't go for him because he'd had 2 flops with Joe versus the Volcano.
Which is a great film.
Which is one of my favourite of his early work. And Turner and Hooch, which I never realised flopped.
Did it?
Yes.
That's a great film as well.
Yeah, so I think that's what it said in the article I read about it. And I think if it was him, there would have been 2 big actors to sell it.
Yeah.
Because I'd never heard of the guy they cast until this film came out. Granted, I was 12. But at 12 years old, I would have heard of Tom Hanks.
Yeah, that was the sort of the peak of his powers that kind of time in terms of quality of performance, I think.
Year before Forrest Gump.
Yeah.
And around the same time as Philadelphia. So maybe the real reasons was he had other roles.
But I think he would have captured that sort of performance. It would have been better suited to him. Yeah. And that's not a slight against Leguizamo, because he is really good. But it's just what they wanted to do with the character, I think would have worked better with Tom Hanks.
He'd have certainly been more likeable.
Yes.
But the reason he wasn't cast, and they went for, I always pronounce his surname wrong.
Leguizamo?
Leguizamo, yeah, was because of his improvised comedy, and they wanted him to bring a lot of that to the role. But then apparently he wasn't allowed to do much with it.
No.
So it was mainly the script, and he done with it what he could. And I think
drinking incredibly heavily.
Yeah, which you wouldn't notice actually from the before.
No, yeah, it doesn't seem.
Well, not that they'd come on falling over drunk, but I think he's all right. But I think looking back, he's known more now for playing the angrier characters and in more serious roles.
Yeah.
Whereas back then, I don't think he'd had a starring role before, and he was in like Die Hard 2 and stuff, and in small roles. So I think, in the context of when it was made, it's probably a better choice than it seems now. He wouldn't have wanted as much money as Tom Hanks, I imagine.
That's very true.
So, but yeah, I mean, he was an up-and-coming star, which when you think they've got Bob Hoskins, who'd been around for a few years, Dennis Hopper as the villain, who had been acting since the 60s with Easy Rider and things like that. Yeah. So it's the mix of getting the younger stars in. Should you talk about Dennis Hopper for a bit?
Yeah, I'm always down to talk about Dennis Hopper.
Yes, big in 60s and 70s. This was kind of during a dip in his career, I'd say. Just done Red Rock West, which done okay. Then he done this, which bombed. Then it was, I believe, Waterworld and Speed, where all villains. God, yeah. Speed was a massive hit.
But
Waterworld didn't, just look back on as one of these massive flops. But considering the budget, it probably made lots more money than Mario did.
It was just very expensive to have made in the first place, I guess.
Yeah. And I think he played those three villains around the same. Of course, he was in. Was he in Pulp Fiction? No, True Romance around the same time as well, which he was amazing in.
Yes.
So he had so when he played the villain in a more adult film like Speed and True Romance, it seemed to work. Whereas in this, well, what did you think of his film? I didn't think he was too bad.
He's not bad. He's trying, which he doesn't always do. So I credit to him for sort of putting the effort in. It does seem a slightly peculiar fit for him, but he gives it a good go. I'd have liked to have seen Arnie. I think that might have worked.
Yeah,
I think that would have been ideal, but I can't fault them for not doing that.
No, it was also, strangely talking of Waterworld, it was offered to Kevin Costner and Michael Keaton, who both turned it down or were busy.
Keaton would have been good.
Yeah. I think around that time it would have actually been nice to see Kevin Costner as a villain.
Yeah.
Well, so it's actually same with. It's not too long after 2 years after the last Batman performance by Michael Keaton.
Yeah.
And that might have actually, if it was a hit, might have actually really helped his career. Because after Batman, he sort of slowed down until more recently, didn't he?
Yeah, sort of Jackie Brown, and then I can't think of a lot really.
Exactly. Yeah.
Sort of 15 years.
Yeah, until Birdman and more recent things like the Spider-Man he was in.
Yeah.
So I think any of those could have worked, but I think they'd have all been completely different portrays of the character.
Yeah.
I just think Kevin Costner, he has got that kind of he can have that mean streak to him.
Yeah.
Which there's a film, I can't think what it's called, and where he played a killer, and he was really good in it. Went under the radar a bit, and early to mid '90s he was a big name. And this could be another reason the film didn't do so well, because the only real draw, if you look at the LP cover there, it's just got the two brothers on. They didn't really use Dennis Hopper as the big sell, I don't think.
No, that's quite odd.
Strange, yeah.
He was still a big name, wasn't he?
He was, yeah, and just one of those actors who've always been around.
Yeah.
But he was another one who wasn't happy on set, and there was delays of hours where he was screaming at the directors and that sort of thing. Because there was two directors, which we'll talk about.
A couple, weren't they?
Yeah, British.
The Max Headroom.
Yeah.
Couple. Yeah.
And
he looks a bit like Max Headroom, doesn't he?
Dennis Hopper.
Yeah. I don't know if that was a deliberate thing, but you think, it's a bit of a Max Headroom thing going on.
Yeah, and that's true, the way he dresses the hair, which is also bit Donald Trump.
Oh, yeah.
Which is what I read on IMDb, that it's been compared, his performance and the portrayal character, he's that sort
particularly when he turns into a big sort of lizard at the end. That's a lot like Donald Trump.
That's very true. But yeah, the power hungry arrogance even. But I think his performance is good, but it's not as memorable as when you think of, say, the Batman film from 1989, even Masters of the Universe. The villains are often the best things about the film, whereas in this he isn't. No,
and this film's clearly sort of trying to ape the success of Batman.
Oh yes,
the influence is heavy, and that's entirely to its credit.
Yeah, the sets and the darker tone of it, which I think works for the film.
Definitely.
But I do one criticism for me is visually it's dark, and apparently they wanted the sets to look kind of like a cross between Pee-wee's Big Adventure and Blade Runner.
Well, because one of the production designers worked on Blade Runner.
Yeah, and I think he actually worked on
David Stewart.
I think that's his name. I didn't make a note, but I did read about that, and I think he worked on Pee-wee as well.
Ah.
So that's why I hired that guy. So you've kind of got the almost Blade Runner mixed with Tim Burton, which for that era, that's very sellable.
Yeah, and it looks great. I don't know if sort of people like the effects and the sort of the visuals of it, but I think it really does look brilliant. It reminded me a little bit. It's a bit Terry Gilliam-y.
Yeah, Brazil.
It's a lot, and you sort of, I guess you look at Super Mario and this, and it's a bit like Tuttle, Robert De Niro's character in Brazil.
Yeah.
You sort of think, oh, if he had his own film that perhaps wasn't quite as good as Brazil, but was still pretty good, it would be Super Mario Bros.
Wasn't Bob Hoskins in that as a plumber as well?
Oh, yes, was he one of the ones who's saying, oh, you've got to have your permits to be doing that?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's interesting.
Yeah.
He's definitely got I didn't think about that, but Terry Gilliam look it certainly has. And Terry Gilliam, I think, is a great director, but has he ever even had a hit movie? So that might be something to... Well, he's sort of... 12 Monkeys was, I suppose.
Yeah.
And obviously the stuff he's done with Python, but he's more of a cult director.
Yeah.
And this film has gone on to become a kind of cult film. It is liked by a lot of people, and when you go to Comic Cons and stuff, there's a lot of the old merchandise still floating about. People who are interested in it, and maybe because it's based on that franchise, but I think it stands well as a film on its own. That's probably what works best about it. So we better get back to the cast. That's what we're talking about. That's me. It's me.
Derailing.
But we've mentioned the main three. But Samantha Mathis plays Princess Daisy, who at the time was fairly big. She was in Pump Up the Volume, which was a sort of big... Have you heard Pump Up?
I don't know that one.
That's Christian Slater was a radio DJ. She's the girlfriend in that.
Oh, that sounds fun.
Really good sort of early 90s teen angst film, really. And she voiced the main female lead in Fern Gully, which was a big hit as well, the animated, which was also Christian Slater. And she's still acting to this day, but mainly TV stuff. So I think she was that up and coming star who never...
And then appeared in Super Mario Brothers, and then...
sort of put a halt to that.
I was sort of reading about how she feels about it. It does seem like she's quite proud of it. She's one of the least sort of publicly disowning...
Oh really? I didn't find anything
she is quite keen on the conventions and stuff, and I think likes that people enjoyed it.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing.
I don't think she understands it necessarily, but she's quite pleased for the people that do.
I think there's a lot going on in the film for something where there's not much of a plot, if that makes sense. It's a basic two worlds have gone either way, and they want to bring them back together to mould the two parallel universes. They kidnap the princess, get her back, save the world. Is the simple...
And the sort of the Wizard of Oz pastiche that's kind of running through it all, quite entertaining.
Yeah. So I thought she was quite good.
Yes.
Maybe not given quite enough to do, but what she did, she was great at.
Seeing as she's sort of... she's not the main MacGuffin, but she's a bit of a MacGuffin, isn't she?
Yeah. She's not the damsel in distress...
No.
Which wouldn't have worked in a film like this. In the computer game, it's princess is in another castle. She's, damsel in distress, and even in the early 90s, that had outdated.
Yeah,
works in a silly computer game, but not in a movie. I did like the fact that they made her quite a tough nut. That makes sense. Yes. And then at the end, when they make her wear a sort of dirty-looking dress version of what she wears in the video games.
Yes, that's quite good.
That's quite a little nod, and there's a lot of little nods like that throughout the film. But the only other sort of strong female character in it really is played by Fiona Shaw, who's kind of a assistant almost to Dennis Hopper, a British actress. I think she's in the Harry Potter films.
That was thinking, I was watching it thinking, who is that?
Yeah, because she's not in the game.
I had a touch of the...
oh, you mean the actress? Sorry.
I was thinking. She's got a touch of the Gillian Anderson about her, but she's sort of too old to have been Gillian Anderson in 1993. Who is that? And then it's I can't remember, Aunt Petunia in Harry Potter films. And so, isn't it? Yeah,
she's been in a lot of things. She was in another disastrous attempt at franchise in '97, The Avengers.
I like that film.
Really, I really struggled.
It's not good, but I remember enjoying it.
That's the sort of film that I should be doing for this podcast.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, I didn't watch it till the very first time I watched it was last year, and I just didn't like it. But that maybe if I'd have watched it as a kid, I would have liked it. Yeah. Hence the kind of point of this podcast. You grow up...
do a Diana Rigg tribute episode where you get to urinate on her legacy.
Yeah, let's not do that.
Let's not do that.
But interestingly, that came out the same year as Batman and Robin. I've never really liked that. I've laughed at it, but not.
For a long time, I thought I preferred Batman and Robin to the Nolan films, I must admit. I still think I might be on that. It's definitely worse than them.
I think I personally prefer Batman Forever to the Nolan films because it's more fun. It's a better film.
That's the biggest missed opportunity in cinema history, though. Yeah, Batman Forever. Anyway, sorry, I've derailed again.
And my personal favourite character in the film, Yoshi. Just what do we think of his performance, or basically the special effects and stuff?
I really like that. It was probably sort of deemed obsolete within about 6 months with Jurassic Park coming out, but
apparently they knew about Jurassic Park and they were trying to
capitalise.
And get the effects good. And some of the people who worked on Jurassic Park came and saw them doing that and was very interested to maybe poach the people working it to carry on with Jurassic Park. And they definitely capitalised on Jurassic Park. It was actually released 2 months before Jurassic Park. But it was like dinosaur fever that year.
Well, because I suppose the book had only come out a couple of years before, hadn't it? And that was massive as well.
Yeah, and everyone knew this film was coming out. It had been promoted for ages before. So I think a lot of it was changed to get dinosaurs in it as much as possible. And I like the Yoshi character. He's not in it a lot, but a lot of the budget probably went on that.
Yeah.
And it does look good. And
it looks really good.
Yeah, and a lot of the creatures, Goombas,
they're brilliant.
Yeah, and they were meant to be background characters, but because they came out so well, they moved them further forward, and further forward in the screen. I mean, as in they're not just background. And Toad turns into one of them. That's an interesting.
Casting for Toad, they wanted Tom Waits to play him.
Yeah.
That would have been great.
Yeah, he'd have been still a bit too old then, wouldn't
he? Who would have cared?
Yeah, that's true. But
he doesn't want to grow up.
The guy who they got, whose name escapes me, Mojo Nixon, who's a...
I of course it is, isn't it?
Yeah, rockabilly singer.
Did the album with Jello Biafra?
I don't know.
Mid-90s kind of strange folky punk effort.
Yeah.
Great album.
Yeah, he's that sort of... And he's,
I'd not clocked that was him.
Yeah, I didn't know that until I researched it. Yeah. And he's sort of as well as a musician, he's a disc jockey type host now in America on radio and a big name. And when he went for the role, he knew they wanted Tom Waits. And he was quoted by saying, "You get a third-rate Tom Waits for half the price." So they got him, but you don't actually see much of him. He turns into Toad quite early.
He's probably doing better things. Yeah, like making an album with Jello Biafra to slag off Bill Clinton. So
there we go.
Can't go wrong with that.
Cannot. I thought he was okay, and the Toad character worked for me. Obviously, it's not a Toad. That's the thing.
It would have been nice to have seen him with a big toadstool head, but it would have been a bit weird.
Yeah. No, I just think that the look of the games wouldn't transfer. It's too bright. It's too cartoony to be a.
It would have been quite boring, I think.
It would have been stupid.
I say this from I've never been that into the Mario games. I've played. They're fun.
Yeah.
But I was always more into the Sonic the Hedgehog stuff. But so I guess I don't come to it with any sort of particular kind of sentimental attachment to it.
Yeah.
So I can kind of just enjoy it for what it is. Yeah. Sort of like the Masters of the Universe we were talking about before.
Yeah.
That I can kind of just take it on its own terms, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of same in a way for me, because I was so young when it came out. I was 11. I played the games, but I understood at that age film, and I got the fact that they couldn't transfer it to look exactly like that. And I went in there and I saw it for what it was and enjoyed it. And it still had so many little nods to the games, like Big Bertha was in it,
and the little bob-ombs.
Yeah, and they mentioned the Cooper coins and things like that. There's a lot, and even what they added last minute was the computer-looking intro. But that gives it the feel of the game, so they've kind of ticked that box.
That made me uncomfortable. I was sort of going, oh god, this is what they're doing, is it?
Yeah, but then they don't, and it swings the other way. So I think the studio actually made them do that because just to make the plot easier for people to understand.
Yeah.
and I don't think it's great, but it does. It's a
you can
little.
understand why they did it.
Yeah, and
But get some more dinosaurs in at a cheap price as well, doesn't it?
exactly. Yeah, and just a whole computer game reference.
Yeah.
But just two more actors and characters I want to speak about quickly. The comedy villain type double act of Spike and Iggy, played by, if I can find my notes, Fisher Stevens and Richard Edson, who are sort of two. I think they're comedians, but they've popped up in a lot of films. Richard Edson was in Ferris Bueller briefly as the guy who, I think he stole a car. They stole a car when they have it parked up.
Oh yeah. When they go to the garage.
Yeah. Yes. That's how I recognised him. Even when this film came out, I was like, "That's him." But how do you think this comedy double act worked?
I think they're pretty great, to be honest.
Really?
I like them. Yeah. They suffer the slight problem of those sorts of characters when you watch films like this. They sort of take you out of it a little bit, but that happens in everything. So I don't. It doesn't really bother me. I think they're funny, and I'm glad they're there. Really.
Yeah, I mean they definitely help with the lighter tone. Kids can attach them as well. There's a bit of sort of Lauren Hardy, Elbert and Costello going on there. That's a mistake. I'm not going to edit it. I'm leaving it in, only because I can't be bothered.
I like his army.
Yeah, but I thought they're nice, and I'd kind of forgotten about them in it, and I like what they do, and they were allowed to improvise a bit as well, whereas they got the chap to play Luigi because of that, and then apparently he was angry because he wasn't allowed to improvise enough. But with them, they did eventually let them, because they kept doing it anyway, apparently. And they became good friends. My only criticism, I don't like, but it works for sake of comedy for kids, is the whole point is they de-evolute people, don't they? So they go back to the dinosaur state.
Yeah.
Whereas with them, they do it the other way round, so they become more intelligent.
Yeah.
Which automatically makes them posh. Which I don't really. Because you're intelligent shouldn't make you posh, should it?
No, that's.
But it adds to comedy effect, and I did kind of like that. And bit of a spoiler, but they end up being more likeable towards the end anyway, don't they?
Yeah.
And I'm glad they're there. There'd be something a bit missing with the villains if there wasn't that comedy.
Yeah.
And if you look at that era, even like in He-Man cartoons, and the Ninja Turtles had Bebop and Rocksteady. It's kind of that sort.
Home Alone as well.
That's true, with the two bumbling burglars. Yes, it is. And there's all that sort of era, and it's like they're kind of ticking boxes with this film. But it is bizarre. I mean, we've mentioned the plot a bit. It's one of those films that you kind of, firstly, how did it get made? Why is it like that? And why is it so weird? And I can see why a lot of people don't like it. I can see why it's got terrible reviews, but I can also see why it's got that cult following. Because, I mean, I was quite surprised how much you seem to have liked it.
I really, really enjoyed it.
Yeah. And what mainly would you say? I mean, you mentioned the sets, the humour. Is it the simple plot? Do you think that helps?
I think maybe it would have been nice if there had been a bit more plot going on. Than it's a little bit formulaic. Within what is quite a weird sort of high concept premise. Yeah. It does get a bit run of the mill story wise. Yeah. But I don't know. It's hard to put your finger on exactly why I enjoyed it so much. But I think it just looked great. I think it was the surprise of it. Because I just thought
be so bad.
And that's the thing, when you watch all these other films based on computer games, and they're almost always bobbins, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, I've always said this is my favourite, or at least one of my favourite video game adaptations. I think a lot of that is because there's more nods to the games. They understood that there's not really a plot in the game anyway. Yeah. So they just done their own thing with it, and I thought it was interesting, likeable, and for me it worked anyway.
And it's actually a proper film.
Yeah.
It feels like a film. You watch some of these ones that are based on games, you think time has passed, but I'm not sure you could count that as a film. And it doesn't feel cynical. It doesn't feel like they did it just for the money. I mean, obviously they did, but it looks like people who were involved with it wanted to just make a good film.
Yeah, I think they appreciated the opportunity of it because they've come from TV. The only film the directors had done before was DOA, the thriller with Dennis Quaid and Meg Ryan. Oh yeah. So I remember being okay, and then I think because of Max Headroom, they wanted to get more into the sci-fi stuff they'd done this, and they pushed for it. I mean, I know Harold Ramis was offered it at one point.
could imagine that he might have done a decent take on it. You watch some of the bits of it, particularly the first act when they're just messing about in Brooklyn. You watch that and think there's got a touch of the
bit of I know he didn't direct it, but he wrote Ghostbusters, and it has got that. At the beginning of especially the second Ghostbusters film, when they're in the city before things kick off, it's just a lot of talking.
Lots of that feel to it,
I think he'd have done well, but I think it would have been more of a comedy.
It might have been to its credit, but I like it how it is.
Yeah, but also I think if Harold Ramis or someone else was behind it, they'd attached the word Ghostbusters to it, or and if Ivan Reitman had done it, it would have been the same, and different. The fact that there was these were kind of unknowns. They weren't selling off other movies.
Yes.
They're making their own. Unfortunately, they didn't go on to much else. They're both working in TV a lot and that sort of thing. But they're probably this will be the thing they'll be remembered for.
Yeah.
Not by many, but for those who enjoyed it. And it's weird. It's its own thing, and I say it doesn't sell off any other films or. They didn't plaster the word Nintendo all over it when it came out, which
was it
The Wizard? Yeah. Which was a big advert for Mario 3 a few years before, which was a film which was about people playing video games. So maybe the video game fans prefer that. I mean, the only thing I can think of recently like that is the film Pixels, but I don't think video fan games like that either.
Had Max Headroom in.
It did, yes, very good point.
I was thinking, watching it, you get that it would have been great if they'd had someone like Paul Verhoeven doing it, and they'd just gone all out. Because particularly the stuff when you first arrive in, was it not Dinotopia? What's it called?
Something like that.
Yeah, that's a different. But the Dinosaur Land.
Yeah.
When they get there, that does feel like Total Recall.
Yeah.
Particularly when that. The old lady pulls the gun out on them.
That bit is very
yeah. And you sort of think, they could have. Just imagine what could have been.
Yeah.
Not sure if it would have been better, but that could have been an amazing, fascinating, horrifically violent effort.
Yeah.
With Arnold Schwarzenegger as the bad guy. And
that would have been brilliant.
Oh, maybe that would have been what we needed.
Well, there's a documentary I'll quickly mention on the Blu-ray called "This Ain't No Video Game," and the makers say on that basically that they knew there was a good film there, and when they think about it, it's a shame it never actually came out, but parts of it do.
Yeah, and I think more of it does than doesn't.
Yeah, and there's some good chase and action scenes in it. Nothing iconic and that memorable, but there's a scene where a police car ends up on top of another car when they're chasing about.
Oh, the police cars are brilliant.
Yeah,
they're really cool.
Yeah, they've got their own look, and there was action figures at the time, so you've got to think a lot of these things were designed to sell toys, which I always want them. I can never get hold of them. They're really hard to get. I'd see that.
Even with that in mind, it's not on the nose. You watch. You'd say going back to Batman and Robin. You watch that and you think, oh yeah, I can see that this is all clearly designed with toys in mind. But this, it felt appropriate for the environment that it was in.
Yeah, there wasn't characters just slung in there to sell an action figure.
Yeah.
And the sets would have been a great sort of kid play set. How you got the turtle sewer. You could add that with his. Well, he has a big skyscraper which is like a castle, which is a bit of a nod to the games, with Cooper.
Yeah.
And so it's got that whole thing that used to happen in that era where a film would come out, there'd be action figures, there'd be a soundtrack, which we've briefly mentioned, which I quite like. The theme song, Almost Unreal, from Roxette, who were pretty big at the time.
Yeah.
They just released the album Joyride, I think, and they were, number one in America with. They say done a song from Pretty Woman, didn't they? Must Have Been Love.
Oh, of course.
Not too long before that.
And always nice to see Joe Satriani get a mention.
Yeah, Joe Satriani's on it. They've got a Queen song. There's a re-recording of Walk the Dinosaur, which fits in well with Charles and Eddie, who were big at the time. Just look at the record cover. We've got Megadeth from there.
Megadeth, George Clinton. Yeah. Brilliant.
Yeah, it's
Marky Mark.
Yeah, probably the best film he's been in. But I've got. You obviously can't see. I've got the LP and
Extreme.
Extreme. What Extreme song is it?
Where Are You Going?
Oh, I'm not too aware of that. Obviously, I don't know the record. I've got it. Yeah. But the Roxette song, interesting enough, was written for another film.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if you know anything of the story behind this.
I'll say I do.
The song Almost Unreal was written for the Disney movie Hocus Pocus.
Oh, yeah.
And they say the words Hocus Pocus in the song a lot.
They do, don't they? Yeah, it's over the credits.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, this is a weird fit.
Yeah. And the reason it wasn't used was Bette Midler wanted her own songs used for it because she's in it.
Did.
So the lyrics don't really fit in with the film, but I like it. I think it's a great song. I saw them live once and they didn't do it. I was a bit annoyed. But the video, which features the son with the curtain haircut from 2.4 Children, is all video game related and really ties in with the film. So that's the thing. What I say, it should have helped sell the film. It didn't. Well, it might have done. I mean, I sort of remember that coming out, but the film bombed, as we keep mentioning, or I keep mentioning, because I'm angry about it. But it tied in. It was like, around the same time, Bryan Adams had the hit with the Robin Hood song, I'll Do Anything.
Oh, the worst song ever. Oh, the worst.
The worst Bryan Adams song ever?
I mean, because the two worst songs ever are both by Bryan Adams.
What are they?
There's that one and the Summer of '69.
You mean the two most overplayed songs ever?
And I think maybe the worst song. They're both awful, and I hate them.
Okay.
And if I met him, I think I'd have to hit him. I'm sure he's a nice man, and I'm sure he has good songs. I haven't heard them, but I'd have to hit him, and he must be used to that by now.
Yeah, I mean, he gets hit less since Ed Sheeran was a thing.
Well, I don't think I could name an Ed Sheeran song like that.
No, I couldn't. I was about to say what were worse, and I couldn't. So anyway, away from Bryan Adams.
Oh, right, sorry.
I'd say the song he done with Sting and Rod Stewart, All for Love for Three Musketeers, was worse than both of those two put together.
Oh. Can we talk about the Three Musketeers sometime?
Yeah. I'll have to rewatch that.
I love that film.
That's a good one. Released the same year as this, I believe.
Really?
Around the same time, 93. It was a good era. It was a good era.
I like this period of films. It's post-Batman.
Yeah.
But sort of pre-Batman and Robin.
Yeah.
That kind of, because they've learned the lessons from Batman, the original Batman. Think, okay, we know how to make these films, and they clearly, the studios are willing to spend money on them.
Yeah.
But they're not. The technology is not good enough that they can just chuck loads of CGI into everything. So they have to get all puppet men in, and it's produced some brilliant. Like I say, this reminds me a lot of the first Ninja Turtles film, which I think is probably part of the appeal.
The first Ninja Turtles film is one.
It's the best film I've made.
Is one I definitely want to do for this.
Yeah.
But you've seen it, so I'll have to leave it. But you can listen back and comment.
Oh yeah,
I was just going to mention actually the writers of the film, because of that era of films. This is kind of appropriate because there's a new Bill and Ted film came out, which were late 80s, early 90s, not too far away from this. The film was written by two guys who didn't really do much else. Done a film called something I can't read my own handwriting for, but they'd done an Ethan Hawke comedy in 91. And a duo of writers, and one of them was actually murdered in 94. So didn't do much. This was released in 93.
Yeah.
Literally robbed and murdered. He tried to help some people out, some cyclists or something, and they ended up killing him. But these two guys done the script for this, and then just before shooting, the film company brought in Ed Solomon, who was one of the writers on Bill and Ted, and he's since done Men in Black and the Now You See Me films. So I think they threw him in. I don't know if he was one of the creators of Bill and Ted or just one of the writers.
It was Chris Matt and Ed Solomon.
Oh, so it was one. Yeah,
because
they've done the new one.
They originally played those two characters in improv groups.
Yeah, they did.
Stand-up, didn't they?
Yeah.
I think they did sort of create the whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah, because they just asked them questions and stuff, and that was how the characters evolved. And I think he's probably brought a lot of the humour into the script.
Yeah.
But probably through the film a bit, because there was rewrites all the way up for it. It was just chaos. It sounds like.
I think that's probably why it's ended up with a slightly watered down, slightly run of the mill story.
Yeah, because
perhaps as a result of editing.
Yeah, and we spoke about the drinking on set, and the did we mention the directors' names? It's Annabelle Jenkel and Rocky Morton, who are the couple. Rocky Morton is reportedly. So I said that he didn't like the costume one of the extras was wearing and threw a hot cup of coffee over him on set. That's in one of the biographies of one of the other actors.
Apocalypse Now.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, they on the documentary, which was made about 5-6 years ago, they do kind of speak of it fondly, but they do admit the troubles. Well, they don't go into the extent of that.
Yeah.
But you can tell it kind of they're uneasy talking about it, and
are they still married?
It doesn't. They're interviewed separately. I get the impression they weren't, and she seems more of a fan of it than he was. She said that she watched it that morning and really enjoyed it, and he sticks up for it.
Yeah,
but I think he feels more it could have been the better film.
Yeah, but
other things what went wrong on set. Well, I think. The mattress, the scene where they sort of go down the slide thing on a mattress, they were injured. All the actors fell off and were slightly injured, not badly injured, but one of the actors could have fell to her death, they reckon, which is crazy, all because there was a last-minute adjustment so it would move faster. Bob Hoskins got his hand shut in a door and had his fingers in a cast, and for some of the film the cast is painted pink to look like his fingers, which I found out after rewatching it. I've got to watch it again and have another look. And so there's all these little stories and all the arguing and mad that for a film of that scale that it was allowed to get that way. I think it's quite. Well, so I don't think you'd get that nowadays. I don't think you'd get that kind of yeah.
It'd be boring now.
Yeah, when the producers kind of sticks up for it, Roland Jeffel, I think is how it's pronounced. It's not that I defend the movie; it's just that in its own extraordinary way, it has affectionately earned the state and is a strange cult status. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
He's kind of sticking up for it, but he said he justifies the fact that it's.
I don't think he needs that caveat. I think it's a genuinely good film. Maybe I've got appalling taste. Maybe there's probably no maybe about that, but it's actually really good. Yeah,
I mean, do you think that maybe people were expecting it to be too much like the video game?
I think that's the big problem. And I say I don't care about it.
Well, I don't think it would have worked as the video game. I mean,
is there a bit where he headbutts anything and all coins come out? They could have put that in.
They tried to do something where coins come out of a machine, but the budget or something. Yeah. But he has big jumpy shoes at one point, so he can.
Of course, yeah, and they put the baskets on their head.
Yeah, so that's sort of brought into it. So yeah, I'm a bit. I don't know how they could do it, and if it was made now and was all CGI and they're jumping on. It'd have been not just a kids' film, but a very young kids' film.
Yeah.
It would work for a sort of preschools,
you don't need it.
No, I don't think it'd. I think it'd have bombed even more if it was too much like it. But the budget, which they wanted to get it for under 20 million, was 48 million.
Brilliant.
And it only took 20 million worldwide.
Nice.
Which is, I think, a shame. And I can remember it coming out on video. But I don't think it came out very quickly to buy on video. It was one of the ones just to rent.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like they didn't give it the opportunity to make more money. It felt, and even now it's out on DVD, out and about. It's probably been deleted now, but it's only ever got a Blu-ray release in this country. It never got one in America. As far as I know, it's the only country it's got a Blu-ray release in, and it's quite a good Blu-ray. There's I'll just have a quick look at there's that making of documentary, which is about an hour long. I mentioned, which is pretty cool. There's an old making of from when it was made, and then just some behind the scenes bits and storyboard galleries and things like that. But that's enough. Yeah. I'd like to have heard a commentary on it, but
the fact going to record one of them.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that Joel Schumacher done one on Batman and Robin is quite surprising. But that's probably in his contract.
Bless Joel Schumacher.
Yeah,
great man.
Yeah, he's so hit and miss though. But
just a cool guy.
Yeah, and by all accounts, the Batman and Robin was the studio, not him.
Yeah.
I think he did do. Well, he done a Lost Boys for a start.
Cool. And you watched deleted scenes from Batman Forever.
Yeah.
And that was a very different film originally.
Yeah, there's talk of a cut coming out of that.
Oh, great.
Like the Snyder one, but the Schumacher cut.
How's he going to do that while he's dead?
I think it's already out there.
Oh, okay. That's cool.
Or editing the stuff back in. So, do you think it should have been a hit?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think it's much worse than most of the films that you got around that sort of time. Of that, obviously not the sort of computer game ones, but it's. I think it holds its own with sort of Ninja Turtles and stuff like that. I know that's a much better film.
Yeah, it's not as good, but I'd rate it above, say, Judge Dredd.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But do you think it was trying too hard to fit in with the other films from that era?
Maybe. And maybe that meant that it sort of lost an identity of its own, perhaps.
Yeah.
That sounded a bit pretentious, didn't it? Oh,
yeah.
dear.
Yeah, but I think a major factor is it was released the same summer as Jurassic Park, and no one really cared about anything else.
Yeah.
Because that was such a big film. That was like the biggest film possibly since Star Wars 15 years before. That a lot of people they during the summer they go see one film, and this was probably brought forward or rushed to be out before Jurassic Park,
so that it didn't just get completely swallowed.
Yeah, so it might have. If it was me, and I could afford to do it, Jurassic Park was released in June. I'd have held this back till maybe like a Halloween or Christmas release, and then it might have got a bit more. But then the cashing in on dinosaurs, maybe they tried to get there first. It's just so. It's such a weird thing, but I can see why they've done it because it had a name. Imagine releasing another big budget film that hadn't got any fan base already around the time of Jurassic Park. Possibly why Last Action Hero bombed.
Yeah. That
was released a week after Jurassic Park. And in this country it was a 15 at the time as well. I don't even think it was a 12 certificate. So I might be wrong, but I get the feeling it was a 15.
But that was a kind of kid-skewed film, wasn't it, really?
Yeah. It's strange how some of these films go. I mean, hopefully the next podcast will be about The Monster Squad, which is a horror sort of Goonies film, and that was a 15 in this country when it came out in the late 80s. There was no 12 certificate, and when it was last out on DVD over here, or video maybe, it was still a 15. So that film had no chance of being a big hit, especially in this country.
Mary Whitehouse.
Yeah. So it's weird how these films, kid-oriented. You need the adult humour in it. I think the 12 certificate, and 12A now, is perfect. Because you can, as long as it's not obscene or too violent, you can do pretty much anything now in a kids' film. Or family film, we should say, I suppose.
That was a nice thing to see with Bill and Ted, though, that it wasn't a 12A, it was still a PG. I thought it was quite interesting, because basically everything that comes out now is a 12A, which is good in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
It broadens things out, but sometimes I wonder if it makes things a bit homogenous, perhaps. Yeah,
and the thing with some films you'll watch, and they'll be they'll just slip the F word in, and then you just so it's a 12 sometimes, and it's like I wouldn't like to see Bill and Ted swear a lot. They say a bit of shit, and there's the insult in the first one they wouldn't say now. But I wouldn't want to see them say strong swear words because they're these likeable, dumb innocents. And there's not saying in Mario there's no swearing, is there?
Not
and that's a PG.
Yeah.
And that might have been a deliberate. Let's keep it that way. And there's no particular violence. There's a bit of shooting and explosions, but there's no.
There's a definite edge to it, though. It's not what you might think a Mario film would be.
No, but
which I think is a good thing. I think it's because I honestly couldn't care less about the idea of a Super Mario film, really.
Yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed the games still.
Yeah, they're fun. But I've never.
Well, I'm more of a Mario fan than Sonic. But Sonic definitely transfers better to storytelling with the different characters.
Because I mean, Mario he's not really a character, is he? He was just a design that worked on the screen. That they've kind of kept.
The characters evolved. Much like He-Man's evolved from being an action figure. So it could have been a hell of a lot worse. Is my look on this film.
But I don't think it needed to be any better, really.
No,
I mean, I'd have liked to have seen Michael Mann do a version with Robert De Niro and Al Pacino.
That would have been amazing.
That might have been something to have seen, but I don't know, unless they're going to get the digital de-aging out again for the two of them. And,
I think they'll be using that for the rest of their careers, if we're honest. But we haven't mentioned the score.
Brilliant.
It's a great, very slapsticky, humorous score. But sometimes I think that went against the dark tone of the visuals.
I quite like that. Because there's a touch of the sort of George Gershwin about some of it, which I don't know if is sort of deliberate, but that probably works quite nicely with
Alan Silvestri.
Oh yeah. He did quite.
He's done loads. He's done Back to the Future.
Of course he did. Yeah.
Marvel films. He's done Forrest Gump, which is a great score. I think very memorable. Yes. With this, he's kind of like you can tell he's just doing it to please. I mean, there's no. Like in Superman, you've got the opening music and it's very iconic for the film. There is none of that in this. No. But it works well with the slapstick moments. It fits for that. But I think the way the film looks, you'd expect a grittier.
You'd maybe have expected them to sort of go down the synthy computer game music-y route.
Yeah,
I'm quite glad they didn't, because I liked the score a lot.
Yeah.
And say there's something quite amusing about having slightly Gershwin-esque stuff, particularly when they're in the parallel New York, and it sort of makes you think of like Manhattan, Woody Allen. Maybe that's me being a
I like the scenes in Brooklyn. It's Brooklyn, isn't it? And there's nothing where they wanted to do more on Earth to save the budget.
When they sort of sorry to interrupt you. No, when they kind of come out of, they sort of, all right, now we're going to do this bit where we go through that wall into the parallel universe. I think I'm out now. I was like, that's so 25 minutes in. Yeah. It was pretty good, and I was like, oh, it's going to be rubbish now. Yeah. And it wasn't. It was still cool.
Yeah.
But I'd have been quite happy for it. They could have done a whole film in Brooklyn. Yeah. I don't think I'd have minded that.
No.
Because it looked like a proper film.
Yeah. Yeah. I like films like, I mean, it's the same. You've grown up watching probably Woody Allen films. I like films set in New York, and that feel kind of worked with it, you know. And the score with them bits, it certainly worked in them parts of the film. I thought the score was great. More when they go to the parallel universe, I didn't think it was quite as fitting, but it helped with the comedy side of it, and it helped keep it lighter for the kids, because it's not a very. When you look at how bright the cartoon and games are compared to how dark, and it almost looks like they've dirtied them up. And they don't even wear the Mario costumes for about 50 minutes through the film, I don't think. Yeah. But you don't notice. Yeah, you don't. But that's thrown in.
Oh yeah, it's
to sell
fun,
it.
But,
yeah. Some of the cheesy lines as well I really like. The evil egg-sucking son of a snake is what Dennis Hopper says.
That was a particularly good one.
That's a great line. And what about all the fungus around the city? What ends up being the king?
Trust the fungus.
Yeah, and that's almost like use the force. And then at the end you see this big giant testicle-looking thing hanging down, which turns into the king.
Oh, of course.
Who is Lance Henderson? Is that his name?
Yeah, he's in
Alien and stuff.
Yeah,
really good actor. He met his wife on set of that film, and done it for a favour because he was working with someone behind film and something else, and done the one scene and met his wife, so he loves the film.
That's funny, because you'd have thought maybe they'd have had him narrate it or something, but they got Homer Simpson. Was it him who done it?
Because it sounded like someone just putting on a Mario voice.
Yeah, initially I thought it was Bob Hoskins narrating. I was like, oh, okay. And on the credits, Dan Castellaneta did it.
Oh, really? Okay, that's money they didn't need to spend. They could have just got Bob Hoskins to do it.
Well, yeah, that confused me.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Yeah. I didn't see that come up on the. I didn't notice it on the credits.
Unless I've just made this up.
I don't think
I am a fantasist.
I don't think you'd have made it. If you did, I won't pay you for doing it. Oh, I don't pay you anyway, so that's good. So yeah, there's a lot of elements to score. We've mentioned the action scenes. I do think there's not an action scene that really stands out. You know, you don't come. You know, like when you see Indiana Jones, there's the boulder rolling.
Yeah,
there's nothing iconic to this film.
It doesn't quite reach those heights.
No,
but it's just solid.
Yeah,
throughout.
And it ends like most films like this, that it implies there's going to be a sequel.
Yes.
Which of course there never was, but that would have been nice, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
There was in 2013 a digital comic book follow up to the film. 2013. So there's
Is that any good?
I haven't read it.
Oh, okay.
It was said that they'd done the film which doesn't fit in with the ending, because the princess shows up with a gun.
Yeah.
I love as well, by the way, that in their flat they've got plungers on the wall, like they're you play a guitar. I think that's a nice little joke. But she shows up to go on another adventure. But it's implied that the film is a prequel to what then becomes the games. This is what one of the filmmakers said, but I can't see that myself. You know, and there was other things like, you know, Bowser in the game, or Cooper, he's called. He's Bowser and Cooper. He's got two names for some reason. Unless it's two characters.
Japan, he still goes by Cooper, doesn't he? I think.
Okay.
It's like the Robotnik Eggman thing.
Okay, because
sort of vibe, I think.
Yeah, because he's kind of a giant, kind of crocodile-looking.
Oh yeah.
Thing.
See you later, alligator.
Yeah, yeah. Whereas in this, he's just a chap who at the end turns a bit dinosaur.
Yeah.
So I think maybe if there'd have been a big evil monster as the villain, that might have been something a bit more memorable for the film. That you could have, you know, like, not that he's a big monster, but the iconic look of Darth Vader.
Yeah,
You know, even
spent a bit more time with him as a monster.
Yeah, I think they were relying too much on Dennis Hopper giving a performance, which is good, but isn't quite there.
It's not particularly memorable.
No,
it's not necessarily any fault of his own, but it's just
it's maybe not given enough to do.
Yeah,
and so really, when you look at it, apart from the odd sort of comic element, it is Bob Hoskins who has to carry the film pretty much on his own.
Yeah.
And when you look at his career with was it Mona Lisa and The Long Good Friday, which were smaller films that made money for adults.
Yeah.
Hook, he was in, was a Steven Spielberg film with a ensemble cast. You've got Robin Williams, Dennis Hopper, lots of actors in that. And Roger Rabbit, he was the main lead, but it's got every Looney Tune character and every Disney character, and that was Robert Zemeckis as well. So I don't think when you look at it, anyone particularly went to see Roger Rabbit because Bob Hoskins was in it.
No.
But he was good in it, and he's remembered for it. So, I think if he hadn't have done that, he wouldn't be in this.
Yeah.
But then is it quite enough for him to carry a film like this himself?
I think he does a good job.
He does, but I mean, name-wise...
Yeah, he wouldn't... it probably didn't help the sales necessarily.
Yeah, but I don't think Danny DeVito would have sold it anymore.
No.
I think they'd have been better, like we mentioned earlier, if they'd have got Tom Hanks. Like in the Lone Ranger film where they sold it on Johnny Depp when he was Tonto.
Why was he in that film?
Yeah, but that was the selling point.
Well, yeah.
But that's exactly why he was in that film.
That's just a shame.
Yeah. So I think if they'd have got a bigger name and made more of the Luigi character, the film might have actually fared better and sold better. I mean, Tom Hanks would have been great. Even possibly someone like, he's probably about 10 years too old, but Steve Guttenberg in his prime. Or nowadays...
Yeah, he'd have been spot on, actually.
Or nowadays a Paul Rudd type. So it's interesting, but it is what it is, and for a film like this, what had so much trouble even getting made, I think it's fared quite well.
Yes.
It's got around that time. Do you know the IMDb rating?
I can't say I do. No.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what I'd give it.
Yeah.
I did give it this because I looked on IMDb and my old rating's still there. I gave it a 7, which is probably a bit high. Probably a 6 I'd give it now. But it's a strong 6, as I keep saying, a fun film. Yourself, what would you give it?
I'm quite tempted to give it an 8, I think.
Yeah?
I think so. Yeah. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, if they were to watch it now, because of the negativity behind it, around it, people might like it more, and that's definitely helpful for you, I think. But IMDb, it's only got 4.1.
Really?
Which I think is very low.
Unfair.
Yeah, I mean, that's 2 out of 5.
That's computer nerds kicking off about it, isn't it?
Yeah.
It doesn't look right.
Yeah, well, it's got.
But I'm going to get all of them and sort them out.
Yeah, actually, I'm sticking with my 7 rating because of the soundtrack. So it's going to have at least 7. I just looking at the poster with it's like the silver looking M with them stood in front of it.
That is quite rubbish, isn't it?
I was going to say, it just looks very 90s, and it looks very... It doesn't look like Mario. It's like they've gone for their own... Almost, the lettering's almost like RoboCop.
Should have got Paul Verhoeven involved.
Yeah, so it's like this kids thing, what they've tried to adult up, but not.
There's an element of sort of halfway house to it, isn't it?
Yeah.
One size fits nobody, perhaps.
But it has...
It fits me perfectly.
Well, it's become a cult classic in a way, and we're still talking about it, people still talk about it. I imagine when the Sonic film came out right early this year, it revived a bit of interest in this film, and for what it is, I don't think it's any worse than the Sonic film.
I like it more.
There we go. Yeah. Say that louder, sorry.
I like it more, and I quite liked the Sonic the Hedgehog film, but I thought this pipped it.
Saying that, Luigi could have been good as a young Jim Carrey, or would he have overplayed it?
I don't think I'd have minded that if he had.
Yeah, that could have worked.
Yeah.
When we get that time machine,
that
would be cool. But I think it's also one of these movies that will get a complete revamp at some point, because Mario's still a big thing in the video game industry. It's probably still cartoons as well. If it was to be made now, they'd done again, who would you have behind the film and in the film?
Who would I have behind the film? That's... who would you have?
I'm trying to think right now, and as we're recording this...
Oh.
It's difficult, isn't it?
Yeah, because you need someone who's not too young.
Yeah.
But you need someone who's not too old.
Yeah.
You need someone who's sort of rotund as well.
Yeah. I'd go more on comedy. So I'm trying to think of a...
Yeah.
It wouldn't be great if Wes Anderson done it, no.
But Nick Offerman's got the moustache for it already.
Yes.
That could be an interesting angle. If it was Nick Offerman and Chris Pratt, more or less doing the Parks and Rec dynamic...
That would be good.
That could work quite well.
That would. You just get the Parks and Rec people in general to do it.
Yeah.
And the what's the name of the main lead? Amy Poehler. She could play the character that was the assistant to Bowser.
Yeah.
Don't know about the princess. Oh, you get Audrey.
Aubrey Plaza.
Aubrey, yeah.
That'd be an interesting approach.
Yeah, that's how we could do it.
Yeah, we'll write to them. What is it, Mike Schur, isn't it?
Yeah, that could work.
Do a Mario film, and they'll say, "Who are you?"
As if they'd even read it. But I think this is a feature I'll add to the end of the future ones. I'll let people know in advance that I'm going to put that question on. But yeah, that would... Him as Mario would be great. You'd have the moody...
the curmudgeon, and then Luigi's a Wally. Yeah.
Yeah, that's perfect. We're going to save Hollywood, people. Thanks a lot for listening. Thanks for joining me again. Pleasure. I think you're going to join me for the Lost Boys, the Monster Squad one.
Sounds good.
I mentioned Lost Boys once and it's in my head. That's one I can't do because it done well when people like it. But the Monster Squad should be the next one. I'm going to just show it to 3 people, then do a podcast straight after, I think. There's a different approach for that one. Yeah. But if you do want to do some research on it before...
Might be a plan.
That might be, indeed. But yeah, thanks to everyone for listening. Share it about, write comments. You can throw suggestions at us for films if you want. I mean, this is more sort of films that I've got to be a fan of it, but I might have forgotten about something and it might make me want to rewatch something again. So let's do that.
Trust the fungus.